Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kid Stories Podcast. I'm Phil Bechtel. Let's get into a shout-out. Lydia from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania shared a picture she drew of Dropkick Kitty Cat, and it was totally awesome. Great drawing, Lydia. I think if you were a character in the stories, you'd be a potion witch who uses her magic to grow the rarest and most powerful potion ingredients in the world. And then you'd use the magical flowers and stuff that you grow to make super amazing potions. Thanks for listening, Lydia. Today's episode is titled The Dangers of Reading Again, Part 2. With their new mission to defeat the Mad Warlock Malakai, Dylan, William, and Jameson were buzzing. But Calynn explained that Malakai was so powerful, they would need to supercharge their power crystals so they were better and lasted longer. There's this old wizard named Althea, and she's pretty much the only spellcaster in the land who can supercharge these crystals. I don't know how to do it, and I don't know anybody else who does, Calynn began explaining. But when the Mad Warlock came into power, he sent his mud minions to hunt her down. So she had to go into hiding to protect herself and her magic. The boys listened intently as Calynn revealed that Althea was hiding in the Floating Isles, a mystical place up in the clouds. Floating isles, like actual islands floating in the air? William asked, a bit skeptical. Yep, Calynn confirmed. I know a way to get up there, but we need to defeat the stone golems before we can get to Althea. The boys looked at each other, a little worried, wondering what it felt like to be smashed by a huge stone golem. The group hiked through the countryside, keeping a lookout for any mud minion patrols. They saw a few, small groups of mud creatures stomping along the roads. All the towns they passed looked completely wrecked. The homes were damaged, the people all seemed to be hiding. Calynn led them through paths off the roads and out of sight of the mud beasts, until they reached a beach. Hanging down from the clouds were thick, leafy vines. These vines are hanging down from the islands, Calynn said. We just gotta climb up. Can't we just use the power crystals to fly up there? Jameson suggested, pointing to the bag on Calynn's shoulder. Calynn shook her head. Oh, we need to save the crystals for when we truly need them. This is all we've got, and we can't waste their power on something we can do ourselves. With a collective shrug, the boys followed Calynn's lead and began climbing the vines. Higher and higher they went, the ground below shrinking away as they ascended into the misty heavens. After a challenging climb, they finally reached the Floating Isles, each one a lush jungle paradise suspended in the air by some strange planetary magic. The four trudged through the jungle until they reached a wide-open space where the jungle floor turned to flat stone that led to a long rope bridge. And in the distance, through the clouds, they could see another island. Two huge stone golems stood, still as statues, right near the entrance to the bridge. Well, there's the golems, Calynn said. She reached into her bag and tossed a crystal to each of the boys. Fireballs for you, ice shields for you, and plant powers for you. What powers are you getting? Dylan asked Calynn. My favorite. Punching, she said, popping a crystal into her mouth. The kids each felt their crystal's power course through their bodies, and they stepped out of the jungle and onto the huge stone slab that led to the bridge. As soon as they did, the golem statues came to life and looked around. Without uttering a word, the huge stone beasts each pointed to the kids and began running toward them. Their huge stone bodies made the island shake as they bounded forward. Dylan thrust one hand in front of him, and a huge fireball shot out toward one of the golems. It blasted the thing right in the face, but it kept coming, the stones now charred black from the flames. William put up both of his hands and projected a huge shield of ice in front of the group of kids, but it wasn't thick enough. One golem reared back and gave it a thunderous punch, shattering the ice into a million pieces. The golems continued pounding toward the kids, and as one reached out to grab William, his stony hands only inches from his face, it stopped. Whipping sounds rang out as thick vines lashed out from the jungle and wrapped around the golem's head and body. More and more vines whipped around the stone beast, stopping it in its tracks as it began to topple backward. As Jameson commanded the forest vines, Calynn ran over and punched the golem in the leg. The stone leg exploded into dust and pebbles, and the beast dropped to the ground. Calynn ducked as the other golem swiped at her. Dylan began peppering this one with fireballs right in his face. Again and again, one after another, the balls of flame smashed into the stone golem. It put its huge stone hands up in front of its face and took a couple steps backward. Dylan stopped blasting fireballs, and William made a huge wall of ice. He used his power to push the wall of ice into the golem further and further, pushing him to the edge of the island over by the bridge. The stone golem began punching the advancing wall of ice even as it pushed him closer and closer to the edge. The beast frantically pounded and pounded the ice wall, and it cracked and shattered just as its stone feet were scooted to the edge of the island. Calynn ran to the beast, and it saw her coming. The golem aimed down to the ground and punched Calynn. She punched up at the golem at the same time, and their fists met in the air. A loud boom and crack sounded as Calynn's punch shattered the golem's entire arm. Meanwhile, Jameson used the vines of the jungle to wrap around and around the golem that was laying on the ground. The vines squeezed and squeezed into the cracks and weak points of the stone body until the green ropes crushed the golem entirely. Jameson looked over to see Calynn punching the other golem to bits near the bridge. The kids all took a breath and looked over the piles of stone that used to be golems. "That was awesome," said William. "Fireballs!" said Dylan, holding his flaming hands up in the air. "Can I get fireballs next time?" Jameson asked. The group walked across the long bridge to the other island. This one was also covered in thick foliage. "You know, if we had a sword, we could hack our way through this jungle a lot easier," said Dylan. "Yeah, we should definitely have swords for this mission," agreed Jameson. Eventually, they reached a large cabin. Inside, they found Althea, an elderly wizard with kind eyes and a warm smile. She listened intently as Calynn explained their quest to defeat the Mad Warlock and the need for supercharged power crystals. Althea, no fan of Malakai herself, readily agreed to help. "Of course, I'm glad someone is finally sticking it to that awful mud wizard. I don't want to hide out here in this jungle island for the rest of my life. Now, it'll take some time. Give me your crystals and I'll take them into my lab. You all wait here." Althea took Calynn's bag of crystals into another room, and the kids took some time to rest. The boys each unzipped their backpacks and took out some snacks. "What are those?" Calynn asked William. "Oreos. Want one?" he said, holding out a chocolate sandwich cookie. "Oreos? They're all black. Gross," said Calynn. "Trust me," said William. With a slightly disgusted look on her face, Calynn took the cookie, sniffed it, then cautiously took a little bite. And then a bigger bite. And then she tossed the rest of the cookie in her mouth and chewed with eyes wide. "This is the most delicious thing I have ever tasted in my life," Calynn said. "I'll give you 1,000,000 gold coins for another one." "Well, you can get 'em for way cheaper where we live," William said. "Here." He handed her a little stack of Oreos, and she ate them slowly, wondering how she had lived her entire life without tasting something so amazing. Hours later, the old wizard emerged and gave Calynn back her bag. "That should do it. Whole bunch of new super-duper power crystals. I really hope you punched that old Malakai in the face for me. He's a real stinker." "Hey, I was wondering, since we're going on this dangerous mission to save the land and everything," Jameson began, "would you happen to have any swords or anything we can use?" "Oh, sure," Althea said. "I brought all kinds of weapons up here to the islands with me in case the mud beasts found me. Take your pick." Althea opened up a huge chest full of swords, axes, all kinds of things. The kids each took a sword and a scabbard to keep the swords strapped on their backs. "Thanks, Althea," said Calynn. "Of course, it's the least I can do. Good luck now," Althea said. "Time for the boss battle," Dylan said. The boys then began chanting, "Final boss! Final boss! Final boss! Nope, Calynn interrupted. Nope, no, not yet. We've got to do another thing first. Another thing? Complained William. How many another things are there gonna be? As many as there needs to be, said Calynn. Come on, let's go. And the heroes marched out of Althea's cabin to go do another thing in their quest to defeat the Mad Warlock Malakai and his army of mud beasts. The end. Thanks for listening, friends. The website is kidstoriespodcast.com. Send all your drawings and shout-out requests to kidstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Adios.